for groups of 15 or more. And don't forget dessert. Our freshly baked cookie platters come in 2 sizes, so there's always enough to go around. Visit www.subway.ky to view our catering menu. You can call or email us to place your order. Then choose to pick up in-store or get hassle-free delivery. However you cater, we've got the fresh flavors everyone loves. Subway. Eat fresh. Cater with ease.
It's spring savings at Reflections. Shop the red tag sale this April at Reflections. Save on kids, men's, and women's selected style shoes and sneakers. Brands like Nike, Puma, Reebok, and Dockers 50% off. Adidas 60% off. Ladies jeans in select styles at 50% off. And ladies tops from $9.99. Men, step out in your Levi's $5.50. Now 25% off. All accessories and handbags 50% off. Shop the red tag sale at Reflections all month long and be entered to win 2 Cayman Airways tickets. That's mad!
At Enterprise Cayman, we're connecting ambitious minds with real-world opportunities. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, tech enthusiast, or looking to expand your network, we've got the tools, training, and community to help you thrive. From career-boosting internships to hands-on startup support, this is where innovation begins. Don't miss out on the upcoming hackathon happening May 10th. Explore this and more today at enterprisecayman.ky. Enterprise Cayman. Innovate, connect, grow.
Come on, let me in. Oh, I can't cope with Karen in the office no more, man. Another day of her could drive me mad. I got so much laundry to do home. Oh, another message? Man, is traffic not moving today or what? Come on, let me in now.
Life is all about the choices we make to deal with the office Karens or sit in this long traffic, or a choice to pursue your dreams to improve your future. UCCI. It's not the classes, the grades, or a piece of paper. It's your ticket for the adventure of your choice. The choice to live your dream. Stop waiting on the path. Visit www.ucci.edu.ky. Choose your dream and blaze your trail today.
Hey, Cayman parents, we get it. You're underslept, over-trafficked. You can barely find your sanity in the morning because you're still trying to find your kids' shoes and lunch boxes. Let Yum take some of the stress away. Every day, over 3,000 students enjoy delicious, nutritious meals from Yum. Over 5 million lunches served and counting. Private school parents? Browse the Yum Cayman app and order up to a month in advance or last minute by 12 a.m. the night before. Government school students? Just drop by the Yum canteen. No pre-orders needed. Yum can't help you find your sanity, but we can sure make your mornings just a bit easier. Check out daily menus at myschoolpos.com or visit yumcayman.ky to learn more.
This is the People's Radio Station. Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Good evening from Radio Cayman Studios. I'm Dion Anglin, sports reporter at Radio Cayman, and one of your moderators for tonight's debate with candidates from Red Bay, followed by Prospect. Also moderating with me is Phillip Ebanks, Radio Cayman's news reporter. Tonight's debate will cover a wide range of topics, including district and national issues. I would like to thank each candidate for participating in this democratic process, which aims to develop voters make a more informed choice among candidates for elected office. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to deliver a brief introduction. During this time, candidates will introduce themselves, describe their qualifications, and outline their political platform. The question and rebuttal part of the debate consists of a series of questions directed to individual candidates. The first round of questions will call to the candidates' eligibility and ability to lead. No rebuttals are allowed in the first round. The following round of questions will focus on national and district level issues. In the first round, candidates will answer questions in alphabetical order by last name. The moderator, Mr. Ebanks, and myself will ask one question to a selected candidate. The candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. After the initial response, any candidate who's directly referenced or at the moderator's discretion will have the opportunity to offer a 1-minute rebuttal to the answer. The original responding candidate will then have 2 minutes to reply to the rebuttal. The moderator has the discretion to ask the original responding candidate to clarify their response if needed, providing the candidate 30 seconds to do so. The duration of the debate is 75 minutes max. At the conclusion of the debate, each candidate will have 2 minutes to deliver their closing statement. During this time, candidates may summarize their platform and make a final appeal to the voters. I will now hand it over to my co-moderator for the general debate rules, Mr. Phillip Ebanks.
Good evening, candidates. The general rules for the debates are as follows. Each candidate is expected to stay within the time limits. The moderator will ensure strict adherence to the time limits and ensure each candidate is given equal time to speak. All candidates are expected to maintain a respectful and professional tone throughout the debate. Personal attacks and interruptions will not be tolerated. No personal devices such as cell phones, tablets, iPads, or laptops for the candidates are allowed in the studio. Notes are allowed and notepads have been provided. Having explained the debate format and the general rules, I'd like to welcome tonight's candidates of our first debate for Red Bay. Independent candidate Mr. Phillip Ebanks and PPM candidate Mr. Roy Tatum. At this time, we'll begin with the personalized questions. First, for Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Ebanks, your extensive career includes roles as police superintendent, director of vehicle and driver's licensing, and over 2 decades as a practicing attorney. You've also chaired the Labor Appeals Tribunal.
I'm sorry, we forgot to do the candidate intros. We have to have them introduce themselves at first.
My apologies. We'll start with you, Mr. Ebanks. You have 2 minutes for your candidate intro.
Very well. Thank you very much, and thanks for having us on this forum. And to the good people of Red Bay, I'd like to say thank you so much for the opportunity to have been able to come into your homes, to be able to canvass, and to be able to hear your views in respect to what you would like to see happen in Red Bay. Clearly, as we've gone along, one of the key issues is that for the last 8 to 12 years, there has been no representation by the previous MP. Clearly, that is something that I'm going to fix. And core to that fixing is going to be that I will ensure that there is a constituency office in that constituency. And there is an advisory constituency, advisory committee to that constituency. Clearly, you will have seen from my brochure that my background is one in which for the last 20 years I've been an attorney at law, and prior to that I spent 20 years in public service. I believe that this blend of experience will serve me well in serving Red Bay. Important for me to say that this election is about change. It's about an opportunity for Red Bay and for the Cayman Islands to move forward. It is not about giving opportunities to the candidates. It's about giving the opportunity to Red Bay and the Cayman Islands. As you look at us tonight, I would urge you to have careful consideration as to which of us you think would be best fit the need for you as your candidate for MP for Red Bay. Clearly, there are 2 aspects of that. Firstly, service within the community, which the issues are very clear on in terms of what is needed within the community. But beyond that, to serve in Parliament, to represent you in Parliament on the national issues. I thank you for considering me.
Mr. Tatum.
Thank you, Jerry, and good evening to the listening public. It's good being here. In terms of introducing myself, My name is Roy Tatum. I'm the People's Progressive Movement's candidate for Red Bay. Originally from Cayman Brac, but I've actually lived in Red Bay for probably most of my life. I lived in Grand Cayman for most of my life. The second apartment that I ever stayed at in Grand Cayman was on Selkirk Drive. Back then it was Selkirk Watlers Apartments. I met my wife when I was living there, and she was living on Grape. So we met within the Red Bay Prospect community. And when we decided to build a home and raise our family, that is the community that we decided to build a home and raise our daughters in. I am a banker, spent 13 years at Barclays Bank, 20-odd years at Butterfield Bank. I retired from Butterfield in 2013, took early retirement. I've been a member of the PPM. I sometimes joke and say before the organization had a name. And from very early days, I helped to grow the party. I worked within the party ranks. And in 2013, when I retired, then Premier Alden McLaughlin asked me if I would join him in the office of the Premier. I remember what he said to me was, he said to me, because I was planning on going off and starting a small business, he said to me, Roy, don't tell me no, because I know that's where your heart really is. And he was right. So it was, I joined the office of the Premier, and I spent 2 terms, 8 years working with him and the government, doing some fantastic work, experiencing work within the government and within the Parliament. And I'm now looking at stepping forward to utilize what I've learned to help Red Bay and the country.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now we'll move ahead to the first round of questions. Mr. Ebanks, your extensive career includes roles as a police superintendent, director of Vehicles and Drivers Licensing Department, and over 2 decades as a practicing attorney. You've also chaired the Labor Appeals Tribunal and served on the Off-Reg Board of Directors. Given this background, how do you plan to translate your diverse experience into effective legislation action for residents of West Bay, especially considering your decision to run as an independent candidate without explicit alliances?
Yes, I think you met Red Bay. I would utilize my background and experience to assist in formulating legislation for Red Bay. Clearly, as you will have seen, 20 years of experience as an attorney, and principally, as you will appreciate, the job of an attorney is to deal with legislation. We have to view the construction of legislation and assist in interpreting legislation for the benefit of our clients. So 20 years of background, and that certainly, I think, speaks for itself in that the Legislative Assembly is where laws are made. So from that perspective, I think I have a way forward in terms of a benefit of my career as an attorney to aid me in that process. Beyond that, I have spent 20 years in the public service. Again, most of that career was in law enforcement as a police officer, where I gained a lot of experience in dealing with communities. And communities and people is what legislation is really about. From that perspective, I believe that that blend of experience places me exceptionally in a good position to be able to perform the duties as an MP. And I look forward to that. Clearly, I don't have an alliance at this juncture, but the important thing is for people to understand that I'm a serious individual who is very, very thorough in my approach. And I will make my alliances based upon the other 18 individuals who are elected on the 30th of April. We will find a government.
Thank you, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, with over 30 years in the banking sector and more than 2 decades of dedicated service with the PPM, you've played pivotal roles behind the scenes, notably serving as head of the office of the Premier during 2 terms and managing the office of the Leader of the Opposition. Your contributions have been recognized with the Cayman Islands Certificate and Badge of Honor in 2021 for your work during the COVID-19 pandemic. As you now step into the forefront as the PPM candidate for Red Bay, how do you plan to leverage your extensive experience in both the public and private sector to address the specific needs of the Red Bay community and ensure a seamless transition in leadership?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. If I have one thing on my side, and I think I have several things on my side, but certainly I'll disagree a bit with my friend here, that the fact that I'm working within a team structure and working within a party, an organized group who've been around for 20 plus years, does give me an advantage. It means that when I speak to people in Red Bay about the plans I have for Red Bay, it means that I speak with the authority of 12 other individuals at the moment who, when we form the government, I do believe we will, have committed to me that they will make sure, they will work with me to make sure that the things we decide to do in Red Bay, the things that are needed to be done for the people of Red Bay, will get done. I will add to that my experience, I've not been elected, but I've certainly worked within the government structures, and I've worked within the parliament. So from day one, I hit the ground running in understanding how parliament works, and also how to get things done within the government structure, within the walls of the administration building. So I do believe that that experience and expertise is what, and the team that I'm working with is what will help ensure that I'm able to get the things done for Red Bay that I need to get done.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. I'll now turn over to Ms. Anglin for the second round of questions.
Thank you, Jevi. All right, and we'll now start our first round, and we will start with Mr. Ebanks. All right, so Mr. Ebanks, this question is for you. The proposed cruise berthing facility has sparked considerable debate, with environmental concerns and economic benefits at the forefront. What is your position on the development of the cruise port?
Certainly, the cruise ship berthing and the proposals for that have sparked a lot of interest from principally two factors. There's one side that are obviously on the environmental side who are really against it. And then on the other side, there are the individuals who are in the market in terms of water sports. And principally, they are obviously heavily in favor of it. It is undoubtedly a position that an important part of the tourism market is the cruise ship tourism. Many families are making their living, and many operators are making a living based upon their ability to be in that market. It is a market overall that I want to be very clear that I would want to ensure that we protect. Now, having said that, and having said that clearly, my view would be that I would always be moving towards doing all I can to enhance the opportunities for people in that market. I've also, nevertheless, have got to take stock of where we are. And where we are is simply this. There's a referendum question that's being posed. And that referendum question should therefore provide some definitive position as to the way forward. I would like to wait until that referendum question is answered before I commit to any further review. I don't believe that the referendum question will finally settle it, because certainly the way that the referendum question is asked is very broad, and therefore I think that the next government, despite whatever comes out of the answers for the referendum, will still have the chore of determining the way forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ebanks. We will now ask if Mr. Tatum would like to rebut.
Do I get to answer the same question?
Yes, you do.
All right. No rebuttal. I'll just answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
Good to go. Prior to the election in 2021, everyone is aware that the PPM, the government of the time, actually over 2 terms, always 2 terms from 2013 through 2021, was looking to put in place peers. that was nothing new. That goes back several elections, right, to several other governments. That was the direction of travel. There was opposition to that, and that went by the by. In the run-up to the elections, the PPM said that we wanted to have the country answer the question about what we wanted to do with cruise ships. That has now come to the fore with this referendum. So my view is we will wait till the referendum is over, and we will see where we end up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks, you do have a chance to respond.
I don't believe that a response is needed.
Right. Okay, no problem. We'll just move on to our second question, which will be posed to Mr. Tatum. Mr. Tatum, what initiatives would you introduce to expand vocational training and better prepare students for the workforce?
Thank you for that. I'm very proud of the fact that during the PPM's term, there was a number of vocational type training that was introduced. The nursing school being one, and also the hotel training school, and several initiatives to provide additional vocational training. What we need to do, though, is we need to try to make sure that our people understand that vocational jobs are good Caymanian jobs. We need for them to go away from the belief that we all need to be bankers. Those banking jobs really don't exist the way they used to. And therefore, it starts, I believe, within the schools at an early age, trying to get kids, the children, introduced to vocational jobs and having them work with their hands. And starting from there, unless we do that, we will never start to convince our kids. And we need to also expand the programs that we have now. What I would like to see also is the development of a dedicated school for the vocations. The school at SciFec is one place. I think that's a good place to actually broaden the work that they do there. So I'll leave that at that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks?
Thanks. Clearly, the idea of additional vocational training has been around for a considerable amount of time. It has been something that many governments, not only the progressives, have had small inroads into helping us to achieve. However, it is very, very, very slow in the way that it is being developed. Clearly, as we look around today at the huge number of work permits in the market for many of the vocational jobs, it is clear that the government has not proceeded with this matter with the kind of enthusiasm and efforts that we ought to. And if and when I am elected, I will make sure that we move forward with enthusiasm to get these jobs, get this vocational type of activity done and education, so that we can move forward into these good paying jobs.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Quick rebuttal, if I could.
Yes, of course you may.
So I would disagree with regards to enthusiasm. I think the enthusiasm has been there, not just for the progressive, but other governments. The issue really is how do you make sure that you get young people interested to do these jobs? Even the hotel training school, it was sometimes a challenge to get enough people, young people in there, and for them to stay. So that is fundamental, is making our people understand that these are good Caymanian jobs once again.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Tatum. We'll now move on to our third question for Mr. Ebanks.
Do I get a response?
No, you do not.
He was the
He was the-
original
yes.
Okay.
question posed, so he
Right.
gets the
Thank you.
last say.
Yes, no problem. So, Mr. Ebanks, this question is for you. Tourism and financial services are the backbone of Cayman's economy, but global challenges such as banking regulations and environmental concerns could threaten these industries. What specific new industries do you believe Cayman should invest in to ensure long-term economic stability?
Certainly, you make a very important point that both of these are the pillars of our economy. And clearly, when it comes to tourism, there is the issue of both cruise tourism and people that stay to come on island and stay. And clearly, this is an important part. When it comes to financial services, again, we do have issues there in terms of international related matters, which do cause issues for us. Certainly, expanding the pillars of our economy is an important aspect, and one of the things that I would like to look at and to press forward with is things that are coming out of Enterprise City, where they're looking at tech and ensuring that we, as we go forward, that we can perhaps make that sort of thing an additional limb for our economy. I think that is an exciting, important point at a point in time where technology is moving forward at a fast pace, and it will do this country well to be on board in that field.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, you do have a choice to rebut if you wish.
No.
No? Okay. Right.
Do I answer the same question, or you ask it
Which-
different?
No.
No.
All right, we move on to our fourth question. And this one is for Mr. Tatum. All right. Mr. Tatum, Caymanians are now outnumbered in their own country. If elected, how will you preserve and promote Caymanian culture and heritage amid a growing expatriate population?
Thank you for the question. Some folks may know, but probably the majority don't, that I spent from age 5 to age 10 in Jamaica. And those years meant that I missed a typical Caymanian upbringing. So I thirsted for things Caymanian, and that has developed my love for this place even more, and my love for our culture. I understand the concerns of our people about being outnumbered. We have seen the population grow beyond belief, including the number of work permits. What we're not seeing within our society is a consequential growth in the GDP with those work permit numbers. So we do need to make sure that we go back at the immigration law, make some changes to it. Enforcement needs to be improved. We need to look at in terms of how we grow the number of new Caymanians. We need the best way to limit that. I think is to limit the folks who become residents. The PR system needs to change. We need to reduce or make it harder for people to get PR, and therefore we will reduce the number of people who become Caymanians. In terms of work permits, that needs to be looked at very strictly, and enforcement, I think, is a large concern. How many people are staying here beyond the time of their work permits? How many people are really needed for the work permits that we do have? It needs a multi-agency approach to look at what is happening within the employment sector and within immigration and work permits.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks, you do have a choice to rebut if you like.
Well, I would just echo that it is important we preserve Cayman heritage and culture. And clearly, the way that we need to approach that is to ensure that as children enter the school system and as we have our national holidays, that we make sure that we include as a part of those important dates the opportunity to celebrate our culture and heritage. It is something that we can't just leave to chance. We've got to be very proactive in the way that we approach it. I do believe that things like Heritage Days are very, very important to us, and that from the first day that you enter into school as a child, it is important that you understand that there's that element of your culture and heritage that you need to feature in a part of your activities.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, you would like to...
I'd just like to add to that. I recall when my kids were young and they came home from school with projects about pilgrims and these very American themes, and I thought to myself, why? They should be coming home with projects about things Caymanian. about Caymanian culture, Caymanian history, and maybe even expand it into Caribbean history. But I do agree that we do need to ensure that schools, all schools, public and private, insist that more Cayman culture and things Caymanian is expressed and taught within the schools, especially at the youngest of ages. Those who come here should understand what our culture is and from whence we have come.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. We'll go on to our next question. The question is for Mr. Ebanks. How do you plan to address the issue of land and property ownership to ensure that Caymanians are not priced out of their own market?
Well, it is an interesting point about the cost of housing and land. Clearly, over the last 3 to 4 years, there's been a real shift in Cayman in terms of the cost of housing and land. Principally, it's come about because of general inflation. The volume of property which was previously on the market has now been taken out of the market. A lot of it has happened as well because of the challenges caused by those who are seeking to become permanent residents purchasing a lot of that property. That has caused the issue of the tightness in terms of the numbers of properties being available and hence the rise in cost. As we move forward to go on the east to west arterial road and we develop property in that area, I think it would be a very good opportunity for government to ensure that they purchase additional land before that road goes in order to ensure that government then has some property that it can use towards helping to control the cost of land. We will also need to obviously move towards producing housing in volume, in much more volume than we've done in the past, which seems to be about 25 or 26 homes a year for low cost. Well, we need to do public-private partnerships to ensure that we do get the numbers on there, and then that coupled with the fact that we are able to control somewhat some of the pricing will help to ensure that the cost of housing is reduced.
Mr. Tatum, do you wish to rebut?
Yeah, I'd just like to add, in 2017, 2018, I remember a conversation within the PPM caucus at the time when we were in government around housing. And we were seeing an issue which has only gotten worse since. So much so that I remember saying to that my own daughters wouldn't be able to afford housing. To his credit, Honorable Joey Hugh, as minister at the time, undertook, along with another minister, a project within government and with the assistance of some very able and capable civil servants to undergo a review of options. And there was a variety of options available within a report. There was consultation across the private sector. Sadly, COVID hit, and that report stayed on the shelf and has sat there idle for the last 4 years. We will dust that off and put those very good ideas into work with regards to expanding the availability for housing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As the original respondent, you have an opportunity to rebut should you choose, Mr. Ebanks.
Yes. I always consider this time of the season as what I call the SPU season, where you shake, you promise, and then, of course, politicians go on and they usually underperform. And this is exactly where we are again at this time of the year, at this time of the season, where having been in power for the last 25 or 30 years, the PPM as the group with longevity are now saying, well, now we're going to do it right, and now we're going to make it happen. And that is the problem with promises when they're not kept in the first place. This is not a new promise. This is something that has been ongoing for quite a long time, and we, the people of Cayman, do need action. And if I'm elected, that is what I will seek to do. is to move some of these programs forward so that we do get the housing that is needed, so that young Caymanians returning will have houses, so that we can ensure that housing in an affordable housing is there for all Caymanians. The opportunity for housing is essential to the family, and we must move on and get the housing in place.
Thank you, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, the next question is to you. Residents of Red Bay have expressed concerns about rising crime, including burglaries, theft, and road safety violations. If elected, what strategies would you implement to improve public safety and reduce crime in the district?
I would answer that, but I must take a minute to respond to my friend here. What was it? Shake, promise, and underperform. The shake, promise, and underperform really are those who are coming to the table and really can't say who they're going to be working with to get things done. But to answer your question with regards to crime, we initiated the community policing program. We campaigned on it, and we worked with the RCIP to put that in place. That is now a shell of what it used to be following COVID. COVID impacted a lot of stuff, including plans for housing, but it's impacted the work of the community policing program. We need to put the energies behind reinforcing, rebuilding that, and getting that back into where strengthening to where it was. Community policing works. Community policing assists with the community and rebuilding trust between the communities and the RCIPS. And if it's done properly, the RCIPS will have individuals reporting crimes, hopefully sometime before it occurs when they know about it. But that has to happen, and we will ensure that it does happen. We were the ones who brought in the first instance, and we'll make sure it gets revitalized and strengthened.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks, do you wish to respond?
I would simply like to say that we have blamed just about everything that we can on COVID. I think that the last time that I looked, COVID has now been over for several years, and we still continue to harp on COVID. What I will say is that most of what has happened in Red Bay, or what has not happened, has been a direct result of lack of interest by the MP. These are not complicated points, but there are things that require attention. And to simply say that they got shunted because of COVID and now you're going to come back and you're going to bring them back is really just indication of the dereliction of duty for the MP. There's no reason why one of the highest paid officials in our country can't do his job. They paid for constituency services at $60,000 a year. There's no accounting for any of that. I say
thank you.
It's too much.
Thank you, Mr.
Too late.
Thank you, Mr. Ebanks. As the original responder, Mr. Tatum, you do have 2 minutes should you wish to respond.
Right. I'll say this to my friend Philip, that if he does get in government, he will quickly find that things do occur that you don't plan for, and COVID certainly was one of them. But this is the second debate now, and I've heard him mention before. My friend Mr. Ebanks and Philip is not debating Alden McLaughlin. Alden McLaughlin is not in this room. So he can say what he will about Alden McLaughlin, but it is Roy Tatum is the candidate for Red Bay. And I I'm not unelected, by running the work that I've done. Running the work that I've done with the country, for the country, within the Parliament. And I'm confident that when we, God's willing, win the government, I am able and capable of ensuring that Red Bay gets the things it needs to get done. Alden McLaughlin won't be there. It'll be Roy Tatum.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. We'll now move on to the next question. Next question is from Mr. Ebanks. Considering discussions around introducing a national lottery, what is your position on its potential implementation, and how do you foresee it affecting the economy and social fabric of the Cayman Islands?
Firstly, I'd like to basically respond to what Mr. Tatum said most recently there, in that he's obviously ridden the coattails of Sir Alden. If you hear him speak, he speaks very reverently about what he's learnt from Sir Alden. He's also been the man who has been Sir Alden's assistant for an extensive amount of time. He says how he loves Red Bay, yet he didn't step in and try to help with the things Red Bay. He can't have it both ways. He can't have it that he's riding Sir Alden's coattail, and then on the other hand, he says, but oops, it's all down to Sir Alden. It doesn't happen that way. He was Sir Alden's assistant. He owes the people of Red Bay an apology, and I wish that he would do so.
I'm going to use my moderator's discretion, as you have referred to Mr. Tatum in such a manner that I think it is right for him to respond.
Brilliant.
I am going to also note, Mr. Ebanks, that you did not answer the question. So I will also use my discretion to give you 30 seconds after he responds to answer the question. Mr. Tatum.
Yeah, I really didn't mean to upset my friend Philip. Seemed upset. But the point I'm making, and I didn't write anybody's coattails at all, and I was more than an assistant to Mr. McLaughlin. I worked with the government in the administration and within the parliament. But the point I'm making is that Alden McLaughlin is not in his room. So to keep raising Alden McLaughlin in a debate with Roy Tatum, I don't see the purpose of it. But obviously he thinks it drives some political points for him. So fine, I get that. But I stand on my own 2 feet, and I will do the work that I need to do on my own 2 feet and with the good people of Red Bay, if they so choose to elect me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. Considering discussions around introducing a national lottery, what is your position on its potential implementation, and how do you foresee it affecting the economy and social fabric of the Cayman Islands? Mr. Ebanks, you have 30 seconds.
Yes, certainly a national lottery is something that I do not necessarily support. I believe that it has a way of eroding some of the social fabric of the society. However, I would also say that it is a referendum question. And clearly, as we go forward and we look at what comes out of the referendum, it would mean that we may have to look to see exactly what comes out of it. But I'm not personally in favor of it.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next
Do I
question.
get to respond to the question?
Yes, you do.
Thank you. I too have my concerns with regards to gambling broadly. However, it is a referendum question. So after the referendum, we will need to see where we end up and where we go from there. There's questions around what exactly the form it will take, whether it really is viable in terms of a national lottery. But it is a referendum question, but I too have my concerns with regards to gambling from a broad perspective.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. We'll move on to the next question now. Mr. Tatum, we'll start with you. What actions do you think can be taken to resolve the affordable housing crisis in the Cayman Islands?
Thank you for that question. I alluded earlier on to our work that was done previously that needs to move forward with regards to solutions for affordable housing, people being able to purchase housing, but also affordable rentals. A manifesto launches this weekend, and you'll see a number of proposals in the manifesto. But increasing the speed at which the National Housing Development Trust builds homes is hugely important. Making sure the government has sufficient land to build on. And also we would need to consider apartments as being another option. But we need to incentivize the private sector. Government cannot do it alone. We need to incentivize the private sector to build affordable homes. And there's a number of other schemes that PPM first put in place many years ago, where the GG Hammy was called, where the government would guarantee the down payment, and the privates and the banks would provide the funding. That was very successful. That needs to be reinvigorated again. And also there is a program now for NHDT to build on your own land. We need to see if that can be expanded. But there's a number of schemes that we can put in place, and we will be putting in place following the election, if and when the PPM, God's willing, forms the next government. Not a promise, not a shake hand, real, viable solutions that will work. We've done it in the past, and we will do it again.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks, you have 1 minute should you wish to rebut.
Yes, and of course, I would first of all say to Mr. Tatum that he shouldn't misinterpret the fact that I'm questioning his party and the way that they have proceeded as any kind of an insult against him. However, I want to say, in terms of the question of affordable housing, it needs to take multiple approaches. We should perhaps have tiny homes. We should perhaps have some multi-unit housing. And of course, we should have small houses. So we should have a variety of different options to fit the bill. I also think that when you start talking about encouraging the private sector to produce those homes, that's a perfect opportunity for public-private partnerships between government providing the land and perhaps due to concessions, as well as the private sector producing the construction.
Thank you, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, do you wish to respond?
Yeah, just very quickly, I cannot disagree at all with having more options for variety of for types of homes. So I rarely agree with, I know what I will agree with my friend Philip. However, I will disagree with him when he thinks that I took offense and I was offended. No, I was not at all. I was just defending my position.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. And this is for Mr. Ebanks. What is your perspective on legalizing ganja? And what is your perspective on this issue? And how do you believe it aligns with public health and safety concerns?
Certainly, I don't support legalizing ganja. I think that there is a lot of unknowns about ganja and the effect and impact on public health. For some people, it seems that it's okay on a personal level. However, I've also seen other cases where it looks like it detracts from them and their person's ability perhaps to really be productive and to have the kind of ambition and so on that is necessary for that person to move forward in a productive way. So at this juncture, bearing in mind what we know of it, I don't support legalizing ganja.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, you do have 1 minute to rebut if you wish.
Thank you. I do believe that we should decriminalize marijuana. We have a referendum question on that, and I will be voting yes. In terms of legalizing marijuana, I have some concerns around that. I know individuals who one individual in particular, went off the deep end, supposedly from smoking marijuana. People say that doesn't happen. I don't know. It did happen with this individual. But also, I've known others who will spend their entire days smoking marijuana and really not being very productive. Is that worse than anybody who spend their days drinking? Probably not. But I do have some concerns with regards legalizing marijuana without knowing more about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks, seeing that you answered the question originally, you do have a chance to respond.
Certainly. I'm committed in the direction that I've indicated. I think that there are more questions than answers. And where there are more questions than answers, I prefer to err on the side of safety. I don't believe that there's a productive way at this juncture that ensures safety, public safety. And in that respect, I don't propose to add yet another drug to the legalized market. Clearly, alcohol is a legal drug, and I appreciate that. But I don't propose to be one who adds another drug to the market.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Mr. Tatum, traffic congestion, particularly during peak hours, remains a significant concern for Red Bay residents, with reports of commutes taking close to an hour for short distances. If elected, what specific strategies will you implement to alleviate traffic congestion in Red Bay?
One of the very first things that we need to do is to start a process to implement a national public transport system. that is needed, not today, that's been needed for several years. The issue around transportation was started issue. Some solutions around this was begun again during the last PPM administration. The concern, though, is that we don't just look at it short term. The last administration went back and forth looking at buses and other options. Nothing really happened with the current administration. Whatever solution we put in place needs to be one for the next 30 plus years. So we may have some short-term fixes if buses is what it is, but we may need to look at other options that may be more lasting. I've heard people ask if a tram system may be possible in between the districts. That should be looked at. Should we use our waterways as a possibility, as they do in Bermuda? That should be looked at. So there should be nothing left unconsidered, or not considered in terms of deciding what it is in terms of the various solutions that we should implement for this issue in terms of national transportation, a national transportation system.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks, you do have a choice to rebut.
Yes, thank you. Clearly, the idea of public transport has been on the table for many, many years. In fact, 25 years ago, when I was in licensing, was when we first had the first public transport board. And it was at that time that we started to move forward. Regrettably, despite those early stage efforts, the subsequent governments that have followed that, which have included the progressives, have not done anything about ensuring the way forward. And as I said, here we are again in the season, and again the promises are being made about what is going to happen. What I'm going to say about public transport is that we do need to move forward. We do need to make this thing happen. We need to stop promising. We need to do.
Mr. Tatum, the question was posed to you initially.
Yes.
Can you respond?
Yes, thanks very much. In 2013, when the progressives took office, the country was in a mess. The economy was in a mess. Our finances were in a mess. Public confidence was in a mess. The first bit of business was to get the economy moving again, restore public finances, look at paying down debt. We did that for 6 years, for 2 terms. So I understand where Phillip is coming from, but I will say this to him. The difference between us, again, is that I'm at least working with a group who have committed, right? And this is a new group of the PPM who have committed that they will get this done. I know how it's going to get done with us. I'm not sure how it's going to get done with him because he is by himself. I will leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Tatum. All right. Our next question will go to Mr. Ebanks. What are some new industries that we should be looking at more for the Cayman Islands?
As I've indicated in my earlier response, clearly, as we look at trying to diversify the economy, one of the things that we need to look at is areas which are in the technological fields. I believe that Enterprise City and the type of activity and way forward that they are moving forward to improve technology is an important aspect. Clearly, there are other aspects of local activity that we also need to ensure that we move forward in. There's a local industry here which provides for all of the things that we need in every day. And those items, whether it's plumbing or electrical or any of those vocational type skills, is very necessary and important. We need to ensure that Caymanian businesses are allowed to develop around those, to provide low interest loans, and do all the other things that we need to ensure that those businesses are allowed to thrive. It is an economy within an economy, and we need to make sure that as many Caymanians as possible are involved in that sub-economy, so to speak.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, you have 1 minute to respond.
Thanks very much for that. Certainly, the digital space is a space we need to encourage. Crypto is also big here for us, but the local economy is hugely important. Small business is hugely important, and the government needs to support small businesses. That's why the PPM, when we were in government, one of the things in 2013 through 2021, one of the things that we did was reduce the fees for small businesses, cut a lot of red tape. There was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of new businesses formed during those years. And we also put in place the Small Business Center to support entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship for Caymanians is hugely important. And I would go so far as to say we need to also teach that in schools as well. So I believe that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, Mr. Ebanks, you do have 2 minutes to respond.
Yes, and I just want to make a quick point in relation to one of the things that Roy said earlier, which was that he felt that I would be hamstrung by the fact that I'm an independent. However, in his position, he seems to bear all of his efforts and all of his opportunities on being a part of a party, and not only being a part of a party, but in that party getting elected in sufficient numbers so that they can form a government. That means that if he doesn't get his government in there, he's not going to be able to perform. In my view, that's only one aspect of the performance you need to have as an MP. An MP needs to be able to stand up for his constituency. He needs to be able to stand up against the back of the government of the day to ensure that they don't only promise what they're saying that they do it, but they actually do. That therein lies how you press on. And certainly I can assure you that come the 30th of this month, and those other 18 people who are elected along with me, they will be more than happy to work with me. Even members of Mr. Tatum's own party. I can assure you I will be well received. I will make things happen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ebanks. We'll move on to our next question. All right, and this one is for Mr. Tatum. Mr. Tatum, there's growing public support for increasing the minimum wage from 6 CI dollars per hour to a living wage that reflects the rising cost of living. Do you support an increase in the minimum wage? If so, what rate do you believe is fair, and how would you ensure small businesses can sustain these changes? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. The minimum wage was brought in by the PPM, and I supported it then, and I still support it. It does need to be increased. I think the rate proposed was $8.75. It needs to be now, given inflation, at least $9. That is my position. In terms of how it impacts small business, I would say we need to consider how it's impacting people who are the customers of small businesses. We cannot have it both ways. There's a concern around whether prices may increase. It might, but people need to be able to live, to eat, and pay their rent, buy things for their kids as well. And $6 an hour doesn't cut it. It needs to be increased.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks, you do have 1 minute to respond.
There's clearly a point under which everybody needs the opportunity to earn a living, to earn a salary, which allows them to basically do the things in life that are necessary, pay their rent, buy their food. And certainly at this juncture, it is very clear that $6 an hour is too low. I think that there was an indication of $8.75, and I would indicate that along those lines, I would support an increase to that sum. I would also look to see how else we can ensure that Caymanians are not in the minimum wage jobs. And I think therein lies an important aspect. We need to ensure that we try to move Caymanians up the ladder so that they're able to get better paying jobs $12, $14, $16 an hour is where they should be, and that's what I would be trying to do.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, you
No,
have
I'm
2
good.
minutes. You're fine? Okay. I'll turn it over to my moderator here.
The next question is from Mr. Ebanks. The high cost of living in the Cayman Islands continues to burden residents, with significant expenses in housing, utilities, and groceries. What specific policies would you implement to alleviate the financial strain and to make living more affordable for Caymanians?
It's a very good question, and thank you for that. Clearly, the issues of cost of living can be complicated because everything that we import, we import, and therein lies a significant difficulty for us. However, clearly, we must look at continuing to see what we can do to ensure that fruits, vegetables, and those sort of things which are now still with some amount of tariff, I think that we should look to ensure that the tariffs on those are taken off at this time to assist the country in being able to get fresh fruit and vegetables and meats at a little bit better price. Beyond that, when we look at the major cost that we are all faced with, or a number of people are faced with, is mortgages. I think that we also need to look at other alternatives to mortgages to ensure that we get longer term mortgages, so that instead of having 25 to 30 year mortgages, we could have perhaps 35 to 40 years mortgages. And in that way, we bring down probably the largest thing that we pay on each month, our mortgage. That obviously wouldn't help somebody who already owns their house, but certainly for somebody who's up and trying to raise a young family, this could represent, $400 to $500, maybe $1,000, depending on the scope of the mortgage, so that individuals would have a bit more money to spend in other areas.
Thank you, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum, do you wish to respond?
Yes, I do. I'll pick up on the last point Philip made in terms of of mortgages. I'm a former banker, but I have to say that I thought it was unconscionable in that period when the U.S. Fed was increased interest rates. I forget what 20 times or whatever it is in succession, that banks decided to increase the loan payments as well. I understand the interest rates going up. Interest rates rise, interest rates fall. But I do not believe they had to increase the loan payment amount in the number of times that they did, making it really hard on families. I think that one of the things we need to do is to bring better regulation over the banking sector. And that's one of the things that we will. So I have to draft a private member's motion that was brought by the Honourable Roy McTaggart to the Parliament sometime last year. So in terms of other things, yes, import duties need to be looked at. I mentioned in another debate that I had about medicines. We need to bring down the duty on
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And I am going to offer Mr. Ebanks an additional few seconds on the next question to take up for the time that Mr. Tatum just used. The final question is, and we begin with Mr. Tatum. Some Caymanians feel that foreign real estate investors are driving up property prices, making home ownership unaffordable for locals. Would you support policies that either tax or limit foreign ownership of residential properties? If not, what alternative solutions do you propose to ensure Caymanians can afford to live in their country, in their own country?
So I'm not convinced that taxing foreign nationals for purchasing property means they won't purchase property. I think what needs to happen is the National Development Plan needs to be modernized. The last two people who looked at doing this was Kurt Tibbetts in 2000. He was booted out of cabinet. You may recall that story. That went by the by. And also Joey Hugh picked it up and started the Plan Cayman. Until we can make sure that there are parts of this country that remain as homes for people and don't go on the Airbnb market, we will continue to have these issues. So a national development plan, as well as continuing efforts around affordable housing. And some of our people want to rent. My daughter, I don't think she wants to own a home, but she needs affordable rentals as well. So taxing is not the panacea. Finding options for affordable housing and our people being able to actually be able to afford land is what we need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks, you have 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Yes, certainly increasing the stock of housing is probably the most important thing that we can do to ensuring that the housing in the range that Caymanians can afford. We need to increase the stock of housing in that $400,000 to $600,000 range. I think that there's also one way that we could perhaps look at is to ensure that wherever those houses are completed in a particular zone, we could say those are Caymanian only houses. In other words, you wouldn't be able to purchase those particular homes unless those are Caymanian. I would also say that perhaps what we should perhaps be looking at is to see in terms of expatriates to purchase homes in the higher income category, perhaps $1.5 million on up. Because one thing that we want to make sure that we don't do is we don't destroy the local real estate market. It is important that we be careful and thoughtful about how we approach it. And certainly these are things that would assist us in ensuring that Caymanians do get housing in a particular price range.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. As
Yes,
the original responder, you have the chance to respond.
Thanks very much. Certainly, one of the things that I recalled that we need to do, and we proposed this, the PPM proposed this when we were in government, when we were in opposition, which is to bring the duty on when we purchase property down to at least 5%. It is remind me, Philip, what is it now? 7.5.
I think it's gone up. It's gone up higher in
But-
range.
But reduce it because we need to make sure we may not be able to tax folks but we can make it more affordable that Caymanians pay less tax when they buy property, buy houses and buy land.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. Mr. Ebanks, Mr. Tatum, that concludes the rebuttal section of our debate tonight. I would like to thank you guys for participating. And at this time, we will start with our closing addresses, and I'll start with Mr. Ebanks.
Again, I'd like to address the people of Red Bay. And clearly, before you tonight are two men, and you're having to make an assessment as to who you think will best represent you before Parliament. In my case, I run as an independent. What that means, in fact, is that come the 30th of April, myself and the other 18 members, whoever they are, will be together from the perspective of forming the next government. I will do my endeavor best at that point in time to form the next government. It is clear, despite what my colleague is saying, that we are going to be headed towards what is called a coalition government. No party is going to take the necessary 10 members that is needed in order to be able to command the government. That means, of course, that Mr. Tatum, if he's banking on a pure progressive government and is not willing to work with the other members, then therefore there is going to be an issue on that regard if he's elected. However, as I've said, I am going to work for the good people of Red Bay and the good people of Cayman Islands, and I'm going to do my endeavor best to make sure that I work hard towards forming the next government and to representing Red Bay and to representing the people of Cayman Islands. I am not going to come back with you with excuses or innuendos. I'm going to come back to you making good on my promise to serve the good people of Red Bay and the good people of Cayman diligently and to the best of my ability. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ebanks. Mr. Tatum.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank my friend and colleague here, Philip, for a good, robust debate. We aired our differences, but there was several things that we agreed on. I too can promise the people of Red Bay that I will fight hard for them. The way following an election, everyone who's elected has an obligation to form a government. So I agree with him there. I am convinced that a large number of PPM candidates will win their seats, and if I'm elected, I will be working with them and with whoever else comes along. But I will say this to the people of Red Bay: I have worked hard within the halls of the administration building, within government and within Parliament. I can get going on day one. I will get the job done. I have been moved beyond words when I approach people and the things that they have said to me and how they have put their trust in me. And I have to say that there's no way that I will let you down. I will fight for you, Red Bay, and I will make sure that the things that you need to get done will get done within the halls of the government and within the Parliament. I want to thank you for this opportunity to represent you, and I look forward to the outcome of the election, but also to meet more of you in the coming weeks as I continue knocking on doors and asking for your support. So vote number 3, Roy Tatum, as your next MP. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. That ends our first debate for tonight. Our second segment, 2 candidates were not able to attend for the debate for Prospect. Therefore, in place of a debate for Prospect, we will be interviewing Mr. Michaels Miles, who represents the Cayman Islands National Party and is contesting for the seat of Prospect. More on that after this. Thank you.
If they are talking about us,
living in your head rent-free all this time.
we must be relevant. Radio Cayman since 1976.
Feeding a crowd? Subway Catering makes it easy. Choose from freshly made sub and wrap platters in 2 sizes, or go for individual boxed meals, complete with a 6-inch sub, cookie, and chips. Perfect for groups of 15 or more. And don't forget dessert. Our freshly baked cookie platters come in 2 sizes, so there's always enough to go around. Visit www.subway.ky to view our catering menu. You can call or email us to place your order. Then choose to pick up in-store or get hassle-free delivery. However you cater, we've got the fresh flavors everyone loves. Subway. Eat fresh. Cater with ease.
At Enterprise Cayman, we're connecting ambitious minds with real-world opportunities. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, tech enthusiast, or looking to expand your network, we've got the tools, training, and community to help you thrive. From career-boosting internships to hands-on startup support, this is where innovation begins. Don't miss out on the upcoming hackathon happening May 10th. Explore this and more today at enterprisecayman.ky. Enterprise Cayman. Innovate, connect, grow.
It's spring savings at Reflections. Shop the red tag sale this April at Reflections. Save on kids, men's, and women's selected style shoes and sneakers. Brands like Nike, Puma, Reebok, and Dockers 50% off. Adidas 60% off. Ladies jeans in select styles at 50% off. And ladies tops from $9.99. Men, step out in your Levi's 550. Now 25% off. All accessories and handbags 50% off. Shop the red tag sale at Reflections all month long and be entered to win 2 Cayman Airways tickets. That's mad!
Come on, let me in. I can't cope with Karen in the office no more, man. Another day of her can drive me mad. I got so much laundry to do home. Oh, another message? Man, is traffic not moving today or what? Come on, let me in now.
Life is all about the choices we make to deal with the office Karens or sit in this long traffic, or a choice to pursue your dreams to improve your future. UCCI. It's not the classes, the grades, or a piece of paper. It's your ticket for the adventure of your choice. The choice to live your dream. Stop waiting on the path. Visit www.ucci.edu.ky. Choose your dream and blaze your trail today.
Hey, Cayman parents, we get it. You're underslept, over-trafficked. You can barely find your sanity in the morning because you're still trying to find your kids' shoes and lunch boxes. Let Yum take some of the stress away. Every day, over 3,000 students enjoy delicious, nutritious meals from Yum. Over 5 million lunches served and counting. Private school parents? Browse the Yum Cayman app and order up to a month in advance or last minute by 12 a.m. the night before. Government school students? Just drop by the Yum canteen. No pre-orders needed. Yum can't help you find your sanity, but we can sure make your mornings just a bit easier. Check out daily menus at myschoolpos.com or visit yumcayman.ky to learn more.
Information, entertainment, inspiration.
Covering Grand Cayman, Little Cayman, Cayman Brac.
Since 1976 till now.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Good evening and welcome back to Radio Cayman's election debate coverage. We're joined in the studio by Mr. Michael Miles, who represents the Cayman Islands National Party. Mr. Miles, we'll start off by giving you an opportunity to tell the electorate a little bit about yourself.
Once again, thank you. It's always an honor to be here and also an honor to speak to our people. And to share with our people. My name is Michael Miles. I am representing the Cayman Islands National Party. I'm a community builder. For the last 35 years of my career, I have immersed myself into community development, in particular working with young people, many of those who are at risk. I started my career off as a social worker, starting at the time it was the Department of Social Services, and working my way up to where I am now, which is an entrepreneur, working with young people at Inspire Cayman Training, where I'm helping them transition to employment. It's been a phenomenal ride for me. I've had a blast serving and helping our people. It's given me an opportunity to travel all around the world. I've worked for government for many years in at least 4 different agencies. The last organization was the Ministry of Education, where I headed up a portfolio or a small team working with at-risk children. We've created a substantial amount of programming in the Ministry of Education in 6 years, transitioning to Hope Academy and serving as a Dean of Students there. And then, of course, while I was there, I managed several nonprofits, from Youth Act, which established youth crime prevention days in the public schools, running the Cayman Islands Skateboard Association and managing the Black Pearl Skate Park. And within all of that, as I said, building a company with my family to ensure that our young people can have a career and transition into not just careers, but also have a life to where they can fend for themselves. My journey is like many Caymanian journeys. I grew up in Central Georgetown. I was just telling a constituent tonight, and I'm blue collar. I'm the type of guy that I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get the job done. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. I'm a natural implementer. I believe that our country is beyond the pale when it comes to talking about the issues at this point in time. I am nauseated where people are getting in rooms and still wanting to discuss the issues. I believe at this point in time we have to ensure that our people are prioritized and we are moving our people forward. We've built a country, but our people haven't progressed. And I am, living proof of that from running a small business and working with young people every day. There's a lot of hopelessness in our country, and I want to fix that. I want to change that.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. We're going to move on to immigration policy.
Sure.
You've advocated for abolishing the current points-based system for permanent residency, suggesting a return to the Caymanian Protection Law. How would this shift address the challenges faced by Caymanians in the job and housing market?
I've made it very clear we don't have a housing crisis, we have an immigration issue. What we've done over the last 20, 25 years is we've gutted our immigration policies. We've made it very easy for anybody to buy Cayman citizenship. We need to change that. I do not believe that any and everyone should simply just be handed Cayman citizenship because they have money. I think this needs to be earned. When I was growing up in Cayman, everyone was published in the newspaper. People had to earn that. And Caymanians had a right to say who they wanted in their country. I believe we need to go back to that. I also believe that what we have done is an injustice to Caymanians because we have made buying homes as part of permanent residence. And because of that, the housing market is absolutely out of control. Because the housing market is out of control, our children can no longer afford housing in the Cayman Islands. The majority of houses or even small apartments are now well over $400,000 or $500,000. And the average Cayman salaries have stayed stifled for the last 10 years. I heard these two gentlemen in here talking about the minimum wage laws and so forth that have stayed flat for the last 10 years almost. Immigration is our number one priority as the Cayman Islands National Party. Our responsibility as well is to make sure that we close the gap even in the public sector, because people could stay in the public sector for 10 years, buy a house, walk some dogs, and get Cayman citizenship. How? Right? We can no longer sustain that. So now we've been put in a position where we now have almost 40,000 work permits, and they're assuming jobs that our children should get. So even though we spend over $30 million a year in scholarships, our children are coming back to our country and are remaining unemployed. How is that even fair? Right? And at the end of the day, it's because we've created an immigration law that isn't on our side. It doesn't protect our people. So we have to make sure that becomes the number one problem. We fix that, there's a lot of dominoes are gonna fall if we fix that. Our housing issue will also come back down, but that's where we are.
Tell me about where you see the balance, because some may argue that immigration reform is a major issue.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they may also argue that there simply is not enough Caymanian bodies to fill every single job.
No.
So what do you see as the balance then between getting Caymanians in the job and housing market, but also ensuring that where there is a downfall and not enough Caymanians, that there is a reasonable immigration policy that will allow to fill those jobs?
I think our reasonable immigration policy right now is ensuring that there are no more foreign persons that are granted permanent residence and citizenship within 10 years. I think that we have to make sure that now every kid that comes out of our school system, you're right, Javid, we have more jobs than we have Caymanians. However, we still have a rise in cost of unemployment. I'm working with these youngsters every single day. I know how hard it is for them to get a job. And I know how hard it is when we're calling employers and the doors are shut for entry-level positions. So I agree that there has to be some sort of balance, but the balance has to be tipped in the Caymanians' part at this point. It's not. We have an immigration system that's way too lax. And right now we have to shut that down. There's the equity that's between the public sector and the private sector. It's not even fair. You can go and work for government and there's no rollover, but you go work for the private sector and you have to leave the country in 9 years. Well, why wouldn't I not work for the private sector for a couple of years, go work for government and get permanent residence. So there are too many loopholes in the system, and what I'm seeing right now is causing a lot of issues. And because it's causing a lot of issues in our country, we can't afford to continue to do that. And here's the reason, here's the kicker, Jeffy. Our people are ending up on welfare. So can we afford that? So let's give away the jobs to the expats or give away the jobs to folks who are pouring into the country. And as I said, I'm not anti-expat. I'm pro-Kimanian. I want to make sure that every child that comes out of our public school system or private school system that is born Kimanian or have parents who are residing here for the rest of their lives as Kimanians, they have to be first. And if they're not first, then we should not be giving away citizenship to anyone at this point.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mr. Miles. The next question pertains to emerging industries. With the Cayman Islands National Party's focus on enhancing education to prepare students for a rapidly changing global economy, which emerging industries do you believe Cayman should invest in? And how can the education system be aligned to support this growth?
Great question. So when I started Inspire 6 years ago, I drove around this country trying to figure out why our people were not hired in healthcare, why our people were not hired in construction, automotive, and all of these different sectors. And all I heard was our kids were not prepared for these jobs because they were not work ready. It didn't come down to qualifications. They were not work ready. They did not have the level of deportment to show up for work on time and ready to work. We have to change that, and that's why I've implemented Inspire Cayman Training, is to fill that gap. There are a lot of emerging industries. We have a booming healthcare industry that's dominated by people that are not Caymanian. Nurses, doctors, pharmaceutical reps, all of these people can actually be trained. Like, these are training, right? This isn't, you don't need a master's degree or a doctorate or, even an undergrad. These are tech qualifications that we can train. Things like AI, right? We know it's coming. We know it's here. But our people aren't getting those jobs. Why? Because we're not starting from high school. We're expecting our kids to come out of school at 17, 18 years old and compete with a person who's actually been doing AI from the time they were 12, 13 years old, right? It's impossible. So we have to make sure that the emerging industries are in our school system. Here's another thing that has to be changed the moment that we take over the government. We have to ensure that WORC and the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Labor are in the same room when people are going on education scholarships. You have work that doesn't know who's on an actual scholarship and when they're coming back. So how do we plan, right? We have to get a plan in place, and the only way that we're doing that is if we get departments in the same room and create a national workforce plan. So why are we spending $30 million a year on our youngsters' education, and then we're spending another $80 million in our public school system only for kids to get out of school and they can't get a job? It makes absolutely no sense. Now, we have a lot of smart people in government, but I can also tell you that we have a lot of silos in government. And those silos have to come down departments that have a lot of different commonalities, like our people have to be able to be in the same room in order to now plan. So things like renewable energy, we know it's here. We know it's in everywhere in our region, yet we don't make it a viable job or career for our kids. Solar energy, we also have things like IT. The majority of IT organizations in our country are non-Caymanian. The majority of IT specialists or professionals are also non-Caymanian. Why? Right? These aren't qualifications that you need a master's for, a doctorate for, a bachelor's degree. This is a training program, right? It's a qualification, it's a certification that we can give a child at 14, 15, 16 years old that by the time they come out of our public school, they could be assuming these jobs, right? But we're not doing that. Why? We don't sit down with work and say, what are the industries that are burning up out there, and let's put those curriculums in. What we're doing is giving a child a
school leaving certification or pass, 5 E's and F's with less than 15 days suspension and less than or 80% attendance, and a kid can get a cap and a gown, walk out to school, and stay unemployed for 5 to 6 years. Because that's what I am dealing with, right? And if we don't change that, here's what the issue is. We now have a crime issue and we have a welfare issue that are costing our country hundreds of millions of dollars every year at this point, right? So we have to ensure that things like farming, for example, we've been talking about it. We've been saying food insecurity. And yet the government have land, and what are we doing with it? It sits dormant, or we're building more buildings in it rather than saying to our young man who wants to be a farmer, let's sublease that, and you need to grow tomatoes and they need to come to our grocery stores at cost because our people can't afford to be paying jacked up costs. You know, things like cybersecurity. We know it's here. Everyone's on a computer. The last time I checked, there was over 120,000 cell phones in our country. And yet I go into most cell phone operating or repair shops, and none of those people are Caymanians. Computers is in everybody's house. So why aren't we producing cybersecurity specialists in our country? Why isn't it an actual an actual program in our high schools or even UCCI or ICCI? Those are things that as a party we are looking at implementing immediately.
There are a couple follow-ups that I want to give you
Sure.
on that. You mentioned a few things. You mentioned AI, renewable energy, solar energy, food insecurity, cybersecurity. I want to get back to those.
Sure.
But you're representing the Cayman Islands National Party. Can you tell me a little bit about what the policy initiative will be on behalf of your party as it relates to energy markets? Is this discussions that you guys have had as a group?
We are having those discussions, and you know, one of the things that we have to ensure that happen right now, there's a lot of entrepreneurs in our country. When we are looking at job creation, we don't look at these emerging industries. What we are doing is we're protecting 1 or 2 dominant organizations, and those organizations basically eat up the majority of the jobs. So at the end of the day, what our party is looking at is how do we invest? How do we invest back in our people that they're investing in these things? How do we invest in farming? How do we invest in solar and renewables? Because we do have those specialists in our country that are Caymanians, but we're killing their organizations because there's not enough work. So why can't Radio Cayman have a solar on their roof? Why can't the government admin building have solar? Why can't all the schools have solar? Right? We are talking about those things, because those things are going to need techs, those things are going to need repairs, those things are going to need implementation, all of that sort of stuff. So we are talking about how do we get people back to work, but how do we give people careers that are actually livable, that provide livable wages, rather than, well, go be a bartender or a housekeeper, right? And there's nothing wrong with those positions, but I want to make sure that if a young person starts off as a bartender, they can become, you know, a person that's making $100,000 and own their own company. That's a start. It's to get them in the door, but we have to make sure that we are moving them forward.
I want to go back earlier. You mentioned cybersecurity, and that's a point that I wanted to challenge you on, because somebody can reasonably make the argument, well, there are some certification courses, for example at UCCI, I myself have done some in the past, that guide you along to cybersecurity. So with some certification courses at a particular degree already existing, what more is needed from there? Because a student can hypothetically go to UCCI and study these courses. So it can't be that it's simply not available when it already is. So where do you see as the next step from there?
Who told you that cybersecurity was available to you? Like who actually told you that? What age were you when you were informed that cybersecurity was a career? So think about it, right? Because I can tell you, I work with young people all day, and none of them came into my center understanding that cybersecurity was an actual career that they can get in. They never heard of it, right? We don't talk about these careers, right? What we talk about is getting 5 E's or F's to graduate high school to get a job. What we are proposing as an organization is that careers have to be taught from grades 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10, 11, 12. We have to actually do the training, right? If I had $1 for every time someone said, well, no, everybody can be a lawyer, everybody can be a doctor, I'd be rich. But yet, we've had successive governments who've come in who've said TVET is the way to go, and yet none of them have actually invested in TVET. 4 years ago, 50 of us ran. The one commonality that we had was technical vocational training programs. Do you know how many the other 49 have actually implemented? 0. I was the only one that invested in technical vocational programming, right? But our kids don't know about these industries, right? Our kids still believe that working in the construction industry is about working in the hot sun. They don't understand that there's human resources, IT, that there's managers, supervisors, there are project managers. All of these people get paid a lot of money. But what we talk to our children about is, well, you can't actually go to college, so go be in construction, as if it's a bad thing. We talk about it as if it's a bad word. Well, cybersecurity should be talked about from the time the kid is in high school, year 7. We have to be saying, guys, we have 50 cybersecurity positions coming up because our country is moving in that direction, and therefore we are going to have these programs embedded in John Gray, Clifton Hunter, or in Prep or Catholic, because our children need those jobs when they're 17 and 18. They don't need to wait until they're 50, right? They need to get those jobs now.
I'm glad you made that distinction, because I don't want to tread the line of answering questions when I'm here to ask them. But in response to what you said, when I was at UCCI studying a computer science degree, that's when it was made known to me that this is an area that I can go in, and it was specifically highlighted. I was already on a degree, but it was highlighted in terms of a certification course that you can do in addition. But I think your distinction that you're making is
it needs
to
to
start
from year 7.
From year 7.
Absolutely. Like, what if we said to you, Jeff, that we could have given you that from year 7, year 8, year 9, year 10, year 11, and at the end of the day, by the time you hit year 12, you already have that certification. You don't have to go to UCCI to get that now, right? And as you transition out of school, you are in that field, right? We are having people come into our country who are starting their careers at 13, 14, and 15 years old, right? The folks that are working in AI, they're not starting when they're 30, right? They're starting at 11 and 10 years old. Like, they're creating apps, and they're very creative because they understand that the boom isn't going to wait on them. The next technologies are already being created for the next 5 or 10 years, whereas we're waiting till our kids go through 12 years of school in order to get them engaged with employment, right? That was when I was going to school in the 90s. That doesn't exist anymore, because when I was going to school in the 80s and 90s, it was only Caymanians in our country, right? When I look back at the stats, when I graduated in 1990, there was about 20,000 Caymanians in our country. We have 80,000 plus and counting, and half of that is on a work permit. So do we want to wait? Here's another thing that I want to make sure that people understand. Our children are not just competing against the 40,000 expats that are on work permits. They're competing against 8 billion people around the world. Because let's face the facts here, guys. The internet has connected us, right? And with the internet connecting us, everything is up for negotiation now. I don't have to actually do e-commerce in Cayman. I can call a company in India and do e-commerce there. So we have to be very careful that we are not paralyzing our children just because we just simply want them to wear a cap and a gown and we think that that's success. It's not success anymore. Success now is when we are providing them the necessary skills to thrive in our environment.
And just because you brought up AI, can you probably expand a little bit more in terms of what training do you think we could reasonably see in terms of getting AI into younger age school classrooms, and what training you would like to see even older students take on?
I believe at this point in time, we have several organizations that are now AI proficient. What we are doing is fighting it. We are having this done in an after-school program. AI skills and technologies are now here. We have good trainers that have come in there. We certainly have the investment and that we have made. And what we now have to do is ensure that it becomes an actual course We don't have it as a course. We are using it as a summer program or an after-school program. It has to be a curriculum. So I'd like to ensure that AI, cybersecurity, farming, and all of these programs or all of these particular emerging industries are all curriculum-based, that they are inserted in the curriculum and our children has the opportunity. You know, the last time I looked at the WORC collects data on the jobs that's in demand. And one of the things that is in demand, the number one job that have been in demand for probably the last 2-3 years that I've been looking at those statistics is a Finnish carpenter, right? That's the number one job in the Cayman Islands, a Finnish carpenter. Do you know how many programs that we have in our public schools for Finnish carpenters? Zero. We have 0 programs for Finnish carpenters. Now, if we know that, because this is a government stat, if we know that Finnish carpenters are in demand in our country, wouldn't you think that the ministry or the Department of Education Services should be saying to our young people, listen, Finnish carpenters are now making $60,000 to $70,000. They're in demand. We can fly them anywhere in the world, right? Yet we don't produce that, right? We should be producing Finnish carpenters. We should be producing electricians, plumbers, because they're in demand. And here's another catch-22 for our people. Those are jobs that are not going anywhere. AI can't take those jobs over, right? They're going to be here for the rest of our lives, right? We need those skills. However, we can no longer afford for those young people to get out at 17, 18, 19 years old and then go through the next 3 or 4 years to try to get those qualifications, when we can actually have that child start in year 7, and by the time they're in year 11, they're qualified. And they've already been in an apprenticeship program, right? Which brings me to my next point. We don't have a national apprenticeship program. We're still toying with the idea. Yet we have just about every industry in our country, including a booming financial industry. And many of those have, you know, where they have to hire Caymanians or at least provide some sort of training for Caymanians. But guess what? Our children do not know that those industries exist. I was just talking to a lady today who is a managing partner or one of the leaders for a captive insurance company. And she's saying that she consistently do a lot of training or a lot of presentations to young people about insurance and what it is. And she will normally say, which one of you guys want to work in insurance? And no hand go up. And then she said, which one of you guys want to work in HR? A lot of hands go up. IT, hands go up. Who wants to be a leader? Hands go up. Insurance has all of those. You know, one of the things that is not happening, it's not getting to the kids early enough, right? And then when they come out of school, they're now being said, well, you're not qualified, because we've all heard that, or you don't have the experience. So they go off to school for 4 years. They get they get their qualifications, and what is it that we say to them when they come back? We don't have an experience. Sorry, we can't hire you because you don't have an experience. What if we can get them that experience while they're going to school? Because they are doing the courses in school, because they're coming out to work in those jobs, and while they're in school, they're in an apprenticeship program that our private sector have to give them anyways, right? So let's do that. We have all these systems set up. We simply just don't enforce it.
All right. Mr. Miles, your next question pertains to governance and leadership. All right, so the Cayman Islands National Party emphasizes creating an accountable government that operates efficiently. What specific measures would you implement to reduce bureaucracy and enhance transparency in government operations?
You know, I've thought about this for a while, because I look at my experience, the experiences that I've had in government. Over the last 20 years, with the years that I've worked in government, every time an election happened, we had politicians who came in and either they raked people over the coals or victimized people for either supporting another candidate or being part of a system of another candidate. One of the things that must happen now is that we have to make sure that there are policies and or legislation put in where that can't happen going forward. I think one of the most troubling things that consistently happens within government is that when someone disagrees with you, in particular those people that are in leadership positions, the victimization happens. I've endured that for many years in government, because I'm not going to sit around a table and have people say things that, one, is not true, two, they actually can't back up with facts. But every time you challenge a person in leadership, you get victimized. And I believe that there has to be legislation put in place that prohibits that. Another thing is that politicians coming into government have to be able to sign some level of mandate that restricts them from interfering with public service business, right? And what I mean by that is that we have politicians coming in, and all of a sudden they're involved in a human resources aspect of things. They get to choose who gets fired and who gets hired. And I think it's wrong. I think there has to be a difference in it. And we can say all we want, well, politicians don't hire. They do. They make those recommendations. They shouldn't. But there's always that fine line in between whether they should be over the entire ministry or whether their responsibility is legislation and policy, right? And I think that there has to be standards now from Parliament to the civil service that prohibits politicians from interfering in certainly people's lives and certainly civil servants' lives, because people are being victimized. That's real.
We want to move on to conservation and sustainability. You've highlighted the importance of protecting conservation legislation and the National Conservation Council. What strategies would you propose to balance sustainable development with environmental preservation in the Cayman Islands?
I believe that we have to, and it has to be done probably within our first 100 days, is to implement a national development plan. We haven't had one since the 90s. And I think it's alarming that we've allowed a country to be overbuilt at this point, and we've allowed it to be dictated by pretty much any developer who can come in and throw around a couple of $1 million. They're building just about on every piece of property that we have. It's completely shot up our housing market, and our children now are priced out. So one of the biggest things, Jevi, I would say that our part is working on is establishing almost immediately a national development plan. It has to be done, and it has to be done in a way where it protects our environment, where it regulates how quickly and where we build, rather than just having people just come in and ad hoc build or promise that they're going to be bringing jobs, and they're just not. We have to also look at the type of concessions that we are also providing folks as well, because what is happening is that we are giving them a lot of concessions, and we don't really get anything, right? We just get it to say that they're in our country, and we're just happy that this developer is here and they've produced $1 million condo complex, right? That has to end, and I think the only way that we end that is to ensure that a national development plan is put in place.
You mentioned National Development Plan. Can you share any policy initiatives that the Cayman Islands National Party would put forward in terms of a National Development Plan? And for example, what is the party position on the East-West Arterial Extension?
We need it. Our position is that we believe that it needs to be built. We are horrified by the stories that are coming out of the eastern districts. People are spending up to 4 or 5 hours on the road with their children each day. We have to make sure that between that and a national transportation plan is put in place, and that's really under our national development plan, is to introduce, or it's really to implement, because we have the plan. We paid $250,000 for the plan, a transportation plan. We believe it's sound. We've read it several times. We believe that it needs to be phased in. We can't just plump it in because we simply don't have all the money to do that. But we do believe that we have to ensure that a busing system, a national busing system, is put in place immediately, because we have to get some of our cars off the road. One of the things that we're also looking at is trialing how we get private school students on buses as well, because we believe that ultimately we have to take as many cars off the road as we possibly can. We've also looked at policy procedures of decentralizing the government admin building. We know that government is the largest employer, and ultimately, can some government departments be decentralized to the Eastern Districts? I believe that it can be done. About 15 years ago, it was probably mid-2000s, I would say, I was here running Bonaventure and Frank McField decentralized social services. It was probably one of the best things that he could have done, because then you had people using those particular departments within their districts. We're doing it with the hospitals right now. Health City is in the Eastern Districts. We believe that if we can decentralize the government admin building, banks are going to follow, right? But those are things that ultimately we have to look at budget, right? Do we have the money? We also have to understand that we are coming into government. Whoever takes over the government, we hope it's us, but whoever takes over the government inherits over $650 to $700 million in debt. And while we have $1 billion budget, we all know $500 million of that goes towards paying civil servants. So there's not a lot of wiggle room, but some key things have to be done. Developing a national development plan, which transitions into the East-West Interior, because we have to make sure that parents and young people are not spending half their day on the road, right? We've heard horror stories of kids getting up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning just to get to school on time. So those are some of the policy initiatives that we're looking underneath the National Development Plan.
Before Dion goes on to the next question, I want to give you an opportunity to probably clarify more. You mentioned things like concessions, decentralizing government, the debt that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
But then you also mentioned creating busing in the Cayman Islands, a national development plan. How does your party intend to fund this while balancing the fact that there is already outstanding debt? I'm not going to quote the number that you have, but I'm sure you're reliably informed in that regard. So how do you intend on budgeting or balancing that?
Well, Jerry, one of the things that people consistently ask is, where this money going to come from? Well, where is it coming from now, right? We have a national budget of pushing almost $2 billion. So the money is there. What we are doing is wasting money on building things that don't need to be built. For instance, I believe that the Cayman Brac High School could have been refurbished, but do we need a $60 million high school? I don't think that we need a $60 million high school for about 150 kids. I don't think Cayman Brackers believe that we need a $60 million high school. And you and I both know before that's done, that's going to be $100 million, right? So we're spending money on things that ultimately do not make viable sense. So why don't we start cutting out the stupid spending out of our budget and let's reallocate it into a national transportation program that we can take more of our cars off the road to make sure that our kids can actually get to school on time in a reasonable way and get home. So we have the money. The money is there. I've looked at the budgets across, sideways, and on top. The money is in the budget. We now need to reallocate it to what it has to be prioritized projects.
Reallocating is something that is within every government's discretion.
Absolutely.
Within the discretion of the cabinet,
Sure.
how they decide to spend it.
Sure.
But whether you reallocate the money or not, the money is still limited. So when you reallocate those funds into particular areas, how then would you fund new initiatives? For example, you talk about decentralizing government. If you decentralize government and you push it further east, you have to build buildings for it in order for these services to be available. So where does that come into the picture for you?
As I said, it is a policy discussion that we talked about. We haven't said that we're going to do that, but it is something that we've considered, because ultimately we believe that if we can get more organizations going east, we have less traffic in Georgetown. We have looked at what that would cost. I would say to you right now, I believe that at the end of the day, we would fund a building in the Eastern Districts to decentralize government and to put a $70 million high school in the Brock. I think it make better sense. However, everything that we have done with the Cayman's National Party has been, how do we do it and what's first, right? And one of the first things that we have to do is look at the budget. What is viable for us? We also have a banking and financial services that are being taxed out of the wazoo, right? So we have to look at how much more can they take, because they certainly can't take more unless they're packing up and leaving. So we have to make sure that there is a balance between what that looks like. But I can tell you, after looking at the Cayman Islands national budget, the level of pork spending that's in that, it is insane. The level of pet projects that people are doing is insane. So we have to make sure that the things that we need to be prioritized, because let's face it, man, we have to educate all the kids, right? So we're going to spend $80 million on our schools because our kids are important. But do we have to spend $80 to $85 million on indigent insurance? Because we simply don't have adequate insurance, and we are saying to insurance companies, you actually don't need to employ our sick people because Cynical is going to pick up the tab on that, right? So there's a lot of actual stupid spending that's in the budget that we can either reallocate or reduce, and those cost savings have to go towards the things that Caymanians want the most. And what Caymanians want the most right now is their cost of living to go down, and the only way we're getting that down is ensuring that we can have things like renewable energy, that we can invest in that we are still not kicking the can of the dump down the road, because that's costing us $17 billion and counting and more. So if we can find things like that, if we can pull $17 million out, why can't we find, funding to create the road for the East-West Arteria and make sure that we can decentralize our government and make sure that people that's working in the civil services live up in the eastern districts, they don't have to come to Georgetown, right? So none of this is to say that everything is going to work, but we are talking about a number of things and we're giving ourselves the options. And as we plan this, and as we get in, and as we look at the budget and work with civil servants to see what's possible, we're going to prioritize the things of what we believe, and that certainly a national transportation policy and plan and implementation has to be one. That has to be in the top, because let's face it, folks, everybody is dealing with traffic, right? And everybody's fed up. So why aren't we fixing that, right? So yes, I'm all for decentralizing the government admin building, but that may not be in the first 4 years. It could be in the next 4 years. But it has to be something that's planned, because you and I, we've been living in this country long enough where, politicians get in and it's really just how they wake up in the morning and they're building an $80 million project, right? That's not something that Caymanians are going to put on our party. We're going to thoughtfully plan this out and make sure that our people are benefiting, because that's why we're doing this, yeah?
All right. Mr. Miles, we'll now transition to cruise berthing facility. So given the recent parliamentary approval for a referendum on developing cruise berthing infrastructure, what is your stance on this development, and how do you perceive its potential impact on the local economy and the environment?
We have, our party have discussed this time and time again. 4 years ago, we had a referendum on cruise, and it was overwhelming that folks did not want cruise ship piers. We've had the current government who've put that back in the table again. I think where we stand in it as a party, we are going to let this play out, where people are going to vote, and they're going to vote their conscience in what they want, and we are going to deliver what the people want. So if the people want cruise piers, we need I will caution them on what that will cost, because, as Jerry rightfully said, we don't have the money, or the money is tight. So we have to now start to look at how we are rolling out these major projects and who are we building it for, right? However, that is on the ballot, and people have the opportunity to vote on that, and we are going to go based on what our people want. I mentioned to you in the earlier question when I said we have to start to look at a national development plan, and I think our people need that right now, because our people need to know that we're not printing money, right? 4 years ago, when the discussions came up with these piers, it was approximately $200 to $250 million. We're now 4 years later where everything costs a lot more. So we are looking at anywhere between $500 to $600 million. We are already in debt by a substantial amount. We are not going back and borrowing more money. So we have to have a clear understanding that Caymanians, their views will be respected, and that's what we're going to go with at this point. But we will be developing a national policy on how we develop our country going forward.
I know you mentioned that essentially the Cayman Islands National Party will go with how the electorate votes.
Sure.
But I think how electorates are considering their candidates is their stance on these issues as well. So perhaps you can clarify a little bit more what exactly your stance is on the cruise berthing facility and
you want my
what
personal
your concerns
views?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking me? I'm not for the cruise berthing piers. Let me make it very clear as well where my stands are. In the last year, we have had over 250 plus kids who needed some level of mental health support. They visited the Alex's place over 2,600 times. Many of these youngsters don't have health insurance. When we fix health insurance for young people, when we fix education for young people, I believe that we will be ready to actually invest in peers. Currently, that it's not high up on my agenda. What I believe at this point in time is a better spend is ensuring that our education system is properly run, that our cost of living comes down, our children can and our families can afford their utility bills, and that we have some level of food security in our country where we're investing in things like farming and solar energy and so forth. But my personal views on the cruise berthing facilities, and no one could convince me different, it is not a great investment for us. I do not see it being a job creator in our country, and I don't think this whole discussion of Cayman don't have to pay for it is sound, because I live in the real world here, and everything that I have had, I've had to pay for. So I don't see why the government isn't going to be paying $600 million for a cruise pair. So I've made that very clear to the people that's going to be voting for me in Prospect. I'm not for the cruise berthing piers. And until we fix everything else, maybe we revisit that in the next 10, 15 years, but not right now.
Some persons who may be in favor of the cruise berthing facility may say, well, this detrimentally impacts more Caymanian-owned businesses than others. How do you then see the future of those Caymanian-owned businesses that are primarily in the cruise tourism industry? Do you see this as and I'm trying not to put words in your head, but I certainly want to elicit an answer out of you. Do you see it as transitioning them into stay over tourism, or do you see it managing in another way?
I think where we are making the most money right now, and where from taxi drivers to our retailers and any other business that's being impacted, is by our folks by tourists and visitors who are staying here more than coming here for just a day. So I've been on cruise ships, right? And my experience in cruise ships is that I've gotten off several. I don't really buy anything, because the monies that I've already spent has been spent on that cruise ship. Is it really having that much of an impact? In the end, is the debt worth it? My youngest is 11 years old. I know that she's going to be saddled down with the $600 to $700 million that we've already borrowed over the last 4 years. Do we want that to double? I'm not willing to saddle her down with $2 billion of debt. It's like that is not something that I'm willing to do as a dad. And in my attempts to transition into Parliament, it will not be something that I would be saddling her down. My mother is almost 70 years old. I want her to pay more taxes. There's no way that that's happening. I've talked to a lot of elderly people in the Prospect area and around this country who are scared, who can't pay their light bills or their water bills, and I must sit down and talk about billing a $500 million pair. There's absolutely no way that that's part of my conversation. So I would have to see the numbers, and based on the latest economist that was just in this country, and I trust her views because she's qualified, and she's saying it is not the panacea of what people think it is. So I'm not saying it's not going to impact some of our people, but I would prefer them own their own houses outright and ensuring that they have long-term jobs and rely on cruise ships to provide those. And at any time they can pull out. At any time when we build those piers, they can pull out at any time. They can say, you know something, we're not going to go to the Cayman Islands anymore. And then we're stuck with environmental damage out there, unemployment, and a cruise port that we can't do anything with. So what I think, what my party has been discussing is how do we ensure that the cargo dock is fixed and repaired. What we're also discussing is how do we ensure that the cruise terminal is better presented. We don't want people having long lines and hanging out in the sun and the rain. So we need to do something about that part. So yes, we're willing to invest in that, but to put a $600 million pier in, there's no way that I'm, as a father, as a husband, as a citizen of our country, I ain't voting for that.
Thank you, Mr. Miles. I'm conscious that we are running low on time, but there are 3 other topics that I would like to get into. You mentioned about the cruise, so I want to give you the opportunity to address the rest of the referendum questions. Perhaps you can give an indication either to your stance or to the party stance, and then after that I would like to get into healthcare and character and expectations from members of parliament.
Sure.
So tell me a little bit about how you feel about the other 2 remaining questions. You've spoken extensively about the cruise berthing facility. There are also topics, a question related to a national lottery, as well as to the decriminalization of ganja.
I believe that we have to decriminalize marijuana up to a certain amount because we have too many young people that are going into our prison system, and they're coming out, and I work with a lot of them, male and female, who have police records and cannot get a job. And I think it's an atrocity. Whereas we can have an expert who bring in a handgun or ammunition and they go to court, get a slap on the wrist, and enjoy the rest of their vacation. I think it's insane. So we have to be able to decriminalize marijuana up to a certain amount. And I'm not talking about legalizing it. I don't think that, I think when we get to that point, and I read all of the reports, right? So I'm quite briefed on the reports from the National Drug Council. I understand them. I've worked with young people who have addictions, so I get it. We are not ready to go down the road of legalization at this point. I think that's going to take us some time. But I believe that we have to decriminalize marijuana because ultimately we are putting our children at a major disadvantage. I think a national lottery is also another area that ultimately our people have to decide. We know that it's happening here. We know that illegal gambling is happening here. Should we decide that, I would be in favor of a national lottery that funds education, not a national lottery that gives a politician a bigger bank. And I think that that's what may happen. And I think what we need to do is change legislation that once we are establishing a national lottery, that funds is subjected for education and professional development of our people, and no electorate can come in and change that. So that's where I'm at on both. I believe a national lottery, as I said, can bring in the useful funds. It can certainly bring something that's been underground for years to the surface. We tax it, but it goes towards education and training for our people, and perhaps housing and any other thing but I believe education and training has to be pinpointed that it funds decriminalization of marijuana up to a certain amount, only because it's causing a lot of harm right now in our country.
I want to move on to characters and expectations of what what the public should expect from members of parliament. And to do this, I would like to have you address a recent editorial piece that made it in the rounds of the media as it relates to your character with the allegation being that your public persona may differ from your private persona. How do you address those issues, and what do you say to persons who have those concerns?
I don't think, I think the persons that have those concerns are people that don't know me or have never worked with me. I don't think it's people that ultimately that I take very seriously, because I think people who know me and know what I'm about don't think that I have a different persona in public or private. I'm assertive, I'm passionate, I'm driven, I'm relentless in pursuit of serving Caymanians. And I think I rub people the wrong way because I am going to be outspoken. I'm not going to sit in a corner and be quiet and act like I'm uneducated, or, feel that the person that gets off the plane is the ruler and the end all be all. So my criticisms have often been from the time I was a child. I have very thick skin on what people say. But the unfortunate part is that those same people will never contact me, will never give me an opportunity to hear my part of the story. They will never look at my record. Those same people will never come to the center that I created for Caymanians and mentor, volunteer, or coach any young people. Those same people have never once volunteered at any of the NPOs that I've created that have served thousands of young people in our country. Or those same people have never called me and say, hey, Michael, can you tell me which young person needs a job today and I'd like to come and help, transition them. So I expect criticism, Jevi. I think being a public servant, it's about being criticized. I know that I'm not going to be the eye candy or sweet spot for everyone, but I can tell you I am the same father, same husband, same friend, same confidant every single day to anyone who knows me, respects me, relies on me for advice or support. And I think you can just about ask anyone who knows me if I've changed over the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years. But what I think that what people misplace based on politics is I'm angry, I am, I am standoffish. No, I don't like crap. I don't like when people are talking nonsense to the people of our country and making our people feel that they're doing a good job when people are paying an extremely high cost of living. Flooding is still going on. And I must sit down and say to folks, yeah, they're like, that's fine. I'm going to challenge you on that, as I expect to be challenged, right? But I also expect to be criticized. And I know that it is by people who personally, who would prefer to see my demise than to see me continue to do the work that I have always done. And when it normally comes? Around election. If I was in an election, you'd hear nothing. But because I'm running for election, people believe that at the end of the day, that somewhere down the line, that's going to turn the stomach of folks, because somewhere down the line, Michael Myers have this dual personality. Call my daughters. They'll tell you, and they're some of my harshest critics, right? Call my wife. She puts me in my place consistently because I'm a staunch advocate. Call my mother. None of those people will like me. Call any of the mentors that know me, that love me, that respect me. I will fight anyone for the people of our country. That's who I am. So do I get off on like? I don't really. It doesn't matter, if folks like me or not. I'm going to be Michael Miles, and I'm going to be relentless and passionate and driven, and I'm always going to serve our country the best way I know how. But I say bring on the criticisms. Dig some more, right? At the end of the day, you find what you find. But when have I ever said that I was perfect? I've never said I was perfect. Man, I've made a lot of dumb decisions as a kid. I've made some foolish decisions as a man, some questionable decisions as a husband. But I've also made some brilliant decisions as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as an entrepreneur. You take both. right? And that's what I say to my critics. I say to anyone who knows and understands who I am.
All right. Mr. Miles, we're just going to shift gears to healthcare access. So the Cayman Islands National Party prioritizes strengthening public health services. How do you plan to improve healthcare accessibility for the residents of Prospect?
I think that one of the areas that we are now doing is talking to a lot of healthcare professionals, from Health City to the Cayman Islands Medical and Dental Association. We've been having a lot of discussions with a number of folks to understand what they think is wrong. And quite a bit of what is wrong right now is that we have a number of insurance companies in our country that are saying, well, we're not gonna insure folks who have, conditions that they considered pre-existing. We can't have organizations anymore come into Cayman and cherry pick who they're going to insure and who they're not, because ultimately, Cynical can't continue to carry the burden of this. So to fix healthcare, we have to start to look at the wasteful spending in healthcare. Government spends an average of over $100 million, I'm sure, on civil servants. Indigents cost us over $80 million in counting. And these are all figures that have come out of many Auditor General reports. One of the most recent Auditor General reports put healthcare liabilities at $2.3 billion, right? Now, that's a scary number for us. What I believe has to happen, we have to either look at a one-tiered system where Cynical becomes the panacea for all, because ultimately we will cover everyone and we will spread the liability to everyone. That means that the folks who are doing exceptionally well and they're young and so forth will spread that liability to cover folks who are not doing well at all. So our party are looking at a number of different things. We have still not concluded what direction is the right direction, but I believe that by April 30th, we are certainly going to get there, but we're getting there based on facts. We're not getting there based on a knee-jerk reaction or that one is going to cover the other. We are saying, let's start talking to the professionals in the field, and that's what we've been doing. We've been talking to a lot of folks. All of our policy initiatives hasn't come from Michael Miles because I know everything or Dan Scott. It's come from other folks within industry, from tourism to healthcare to construction. We've been having a lot of conversations because, yes, we want to find a balance, but the goal is what is in the best interest of Caymanians, right? What is in the best interest of our people and who's going to benefit? Because if our people aren't benefiting, the Cayman Islands National Party isn't doing it. That's the goal, and that's what we've told a lot of investors who've approached us about what our intentions are. We have to now get to the point where Caymanians are benefiting, not just the Cayman Islands, because the Cayman Islands have benefited, right? We have hotels and we have condos and we have $1 million homes and we have great restaurants. We have to now ensure that the Caymanians are benefiting from the success that we have put in our country. We have to make sure that in healthcare we're protecting our young people. We have to make sure that we're protecting our elderly, but that cost. So, as I said to Jevi earlier, we have to look at our budget and we have to look at is it viable to provide healthcare for all young people under the age of 18 and all elderly, and who's going to do that? Because let me tell you, Cynical can't take on more, right? Not with $2.3 billion in liabilities. The government can't take on more. So how do we spread that around? And that's what we're currently looking at, is what new business we have in our country, what insurance companies, what they can take on, because ultimately, if they want to pay, if they want to get paid here, then they have to play by some of the rules as well that we put in place.
Thank you very much. We're almost at a close, but I would use this time for you to give your closing statements and tell the people of Prospect why they should vote for you come April 30th.
It's a great question, and I remember when I was answering this question with the Chamber of Commerce Forum, and I will tell you where we're at. Some people think that we're at a crossroads. We're not. We're at a cliff. I'm in this race because I'm scared. For the first time, I think in my 25 years or 30 years of voting, I'm scared. I'm scared for the generations that my daughters are in. I'm scared for the generation that my mother is in. Because I walk Prospect regularly, and I'm talking to people who are hurting. Just today, I sat in the home of an 85-year-old retiree who's had to go back to work for 20 hours to support herself, whose house is falling apart. I spoke to an 84-year-old whose yard is flooding, and he has nowhere to turn. And then I'm coming from speaking to a 29-year-old who is struggling to ensure that she can afford a house in our country. Or a teenager who has remained unemployed for the last 3 years because he doesn't have the necessary skills and qualifications to get the job that he wants to support himself. Or the two-parent family who requires a third income just to pay rent. So what Prospect has gotten is a relentless fighter, a person who's knowledgeable, a person who is enrooted in this country in love and passion for its people. I love Cayman, but I love Caymanians a lot more because when my mom was a single mom, it was Caymanians that circled the wagon. It was Caymanians that encouraged me. It was Caymanian teachers. It was Caymanian coaches. My very first trip getting off of Cayman at 12, 13 years old was playing for the under-13 national team. I wouldn't have traveled anywhere else. It was a Caymanian coach, Gillis Seymour, that told me that I can actually play football in another country at a high level and do well. It was Caymanians that gave me hope. That's what I want to give back to the people of our country. And yes, I represent Prospect, but I am a Caymanian that represent Caymanians, right? And my responsibility is to ensure that all Caymanians have a clear understanding that as a member of the Caymanians National Party, we're here to protect them. We're here to make sure that everybody has an equal amount of opportunity to get an education, to provide for their families, to have food security, to ensure that they have proper health care. We're ensuring that our elderly can retire with pride and dignity. That's the Cayman that I grew up in. You know, all I want to do is give them back that, right? Like, that's why I'm in this, right? It's just to give them back that. So that's why I'm in this race.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miles. That's very good. We appreciate you stopping by here at Radio Cayman and sharing your views.
I appreciate you having me.
No problem. That ends tonight's debate and interview. Our next debate is Monday, April 7th from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Thank you to our debate sponsors, Subway, Reflections, Enterprise Cayman, Yum, UCCI, and Winner Circle. Also a special thank you to Mr. Phillip Ebanks, Independent, and Mr. Roy Tatum, PPM candidate, for stopping by previously for the very first debate. Thank you as well to our listeners on the airwaves and streams, and of course the candidates for their participation. Thank you also to Mr. Jeffrey Ebanks, my co-moderator here. I appreciate you. Job well done. Cayman Islands, God bless. Good night.
Hey Cayman parents, we get it. You're underslept, over-trafficked, you can barely find your sanity in the morning because you're still trying to find your kids' shoes and lunch boxes. Let Yum take some of the stress away. Every day, over 3,000 students enjoy delicious, nutritious meals from Yum. Over 5 million lunches served and counting. Private school parents? Browse the Yum Cayman app and order up to a month in advance or last minute by 12 a.m. the night before. Government school students? Just drop by the Yum canteen. No pre-orders needed. Yum can't help you find your sanity, but we can sure make your mornings just a bit easier. Check out daily menus at myschoolpos.com or visit yumcayman.ky to learn more.
Feeding a crowd? Subway Catering makes it easy. Choose from freshly made sub and wrap platters in 2 sizes, or go for individual boxed meals, complete with a 6-inch sub, cookie, and chips. Perfect for groups of 15 or more. And don't forget dessert. Our freshly baked cookie platters come in 2 sizes, so there's always enough to go around. Visit www.subway.ky to view our catering menu. You can call or email us to place your order. Then choose to pick up in-store or get hassle-free delivery. However you cater, we've got the fresh flavors everyone loves. Subway. Eat fresh. Cater with ease.
It's spring savings at Reflections. Shop the red tag sale this April at Reflections. Save on kids, men's, and women's selected style shoes and sneakers. Brands like Nike, Puma, Reebok, and Dockers 50% off. Adidas 60% off. Ladies jeans in select styles at 50% off. And ladies tops from $9.99. Men, step out in your Levi's $5.50. Now 25% off. All accessories and handbags 50% off. Shop the red tag sale at Reflections all month long and be entered to win 2 Cayman Airways tickets. That's mad!
At Enterprise Cayman, we're connecting ambitious minds with real-world opportunities. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, tech enthusiast, or looking to expand your network, we've got the tools, training, and community to help you thrive. From career-boosting internships to hands-on startup support, this is where innovation begins. Don't miss out on the upcoming hackathon happening May 10th. Explore this and more today at enterprisecayman.ky. Enterprise Cayman. Innovate, connect, grow.
Come on, let me in. I can't cope with Karen in the office no more, man. Another day of her can drive me mad. I got so much laundry to do home. Oh, another message? Man, this traffic not moving today, or come on, let me in now.
Life is all about the choices we make to deal with the office Karens or sit in this long traffic, or a choice to pursue your dreams to improve your future. UCCI. It's not the classes, the grades, or a piece of paper. It's your ticket for the adventure of your choice. The choice to live your dream. Stop waiting on the path. Visit www.ucci.edu.ky. Choose your dream and blaze your trail today.
The voice of the Cayman Islands.
89.9 FM in Grand Cayman and 93.9 FM in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman.
Silver wings shining in the sun.